So we're going to be discussing interview strategies when you're working on a TV, radio, or web story. First, I want to differentiate from the different types of interviews. The first one is a live interview, and these are actually happening as you're on the air. So they happen during a live newscast or during a live show, during a live event. Oftentimes these are breaking news interviews. Sometimes they happen over the phone. That would be called a phoner, in case you hear that term in an internship or something like that. When it comes to these live interviews, time is usually at a premium. You want to get in, get out, get the information you need, and move on to the next thing. We usually don't sit and dwell on these live interviews. We don't hum and haw as we think about the next thing to ask. We're usually straight on point. These are really difficult to do well, and they take a lot of practice and skill to do it. Doing your first live interview on the air is much harder than it seems, and even seasoned pros sometimes fail at it. Here's one example. This is from a couple years ago, and I still think this is the best example of awkward live interviews. This was after the NFC Championship game 2 years ago.
Thank you so much, Richard. Let me ask you the final play. Take me through it.
Well, I'm the best one to get it. When you try me with sorry, say like crapshoot, that's the result you won't get. Don't you ever talk about me.
Who was talking about you?
Crapshoot, don't you open your mouth about the best. Let me have a center for you real quick. LLB.
All right, before. And Joe, back over to you.
All right, well, we saw.
So a couple of things there. Erin Andrews caught a lot of flack for that interview. I actually think she did a really good job. She asked the logical follow-up, who was talking about you? He was so upset about someone talking about him. And she asked the great follow-up, well, who was it? And the awkward dismount was not her fault. There was probably a producer screaming in her ear at that point to dump out of it. Come to find out, that is exactly what happened. They were concerned he was going to start cussing on the air, and they wanted to get out of that interview as quickly as possible. So you see how a live interview can possibly go wrong. Thankfully for us, or for you in this class, we're doing taped interviews. That means we're doing these where they are not airing live as you're doing them. That means they're more relaxed than a live interview. That means you can ask as many questions as you want as long as the person has time. And you can pick the answers that make your story. So if you ask a question and they give an unclear answer, find a different way to ask that question and try to get a better answer. We have the time with these taped interviews. And the goal always, 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 always is to get usable sound bites. Even if you're interviewing a spokesperson who you have no intention of using any of that sound, the goal should still be to get usable sound bites, because you never know what's going to happen. You might need that sound. So always try to get people to give you usable sound bites. A couple things to consider when you're doing an interview. Location in TV is incredibly important. Location in radio does not matter, right? We could be on the phone for all we care. As long as you're getting the audio, that's fine. But in TV, we need to be able to see people. They need to be lit properly. The background needs to be nice. Or not nice, but relevant or fine for TV. You need to watch noise, background noise. Typically, you're going to want to shoot outside. One, because light is usually a lot better outside. The background is usually better. Sometimes you will have to come inside. In that case, you might need artificial light. You need to make sure and get it to where they don't look like they're taking a mugshot, stuff like that. There are a lot of things to consider when you're doing your location. One thing to consider if you're going outside for a shot, make sure you're paying attention to that background noise or the noise going on behind you. Did a plane fly over while the person was talking? If so, the microphone probably picked that up. So that's incredibly important. Is there a lot of people talking around where you are? The microphone's going to pick that up. Is there construction going on? Is there traffic? All those things are things to keep in mind. You also have to keep in mind the situation. If you're in a breaking news situation and you're getting ready to do an interview, you're not getting a sit-down, perfectly framed, perfectly lit shot or interview. You're probably getting what's affectionately known in the business as a gangbang, which means every reporter is going to be standing around talking to the same one person. You can imagine the shock on my face the first time I heard that phrase when a photographer said he was heading out for a gangbang. So I offer that now so you don't have the same jaw drop as I did. until somebody explained it to me. We see these happening all the time during breaking news. All the photographers standing around, reporters sticking their microphones out, all screaming out questions to the same one person. Those are going to be the typical breaking news interview situations that you get. We also have something called MOS. These are man-on-the-street interviews. These are where you're just getting random opinions from people. In those cases, they're almost always going to be outside. And if it's a serious piece, then you're probably going to have, a sit-down, well-lit piece like that. The mood also becomes different. If it's a super emotional piece, they're not going to be standing up. Probably you're going to want them sitting down so they can compose themselves, things like that. Okay, so how to interview. A couple of very important things to do. The first thing you need to do, one, you're going to be nervous, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. You're still learning at this point how to be better interviewers. So this is something foreign to you, and that's completely fine. But you have to remember the person you're talking to is also going to be very nervous. Doing TV interviews, especially when the cameras are rolling, that's nerve-wracking. There's nothing wrong with that. So here are a couple things I do before each interview to help put the person who I'm about to interview at ease. One, I talk to them, but I don't talk too much. I don't want to start giving them the opportunity to give me great answers while I'm not rolling. So you want to have a little chit-chat just to, get that friendly conversation rolling, but I don't want to start talking about the topic that we're going to be discussing because I don't want them to start giving answers when I'm not ready. The second thing is you're going to get this a lot. Well, what are you going to ask me? Tell me the questions you're going to ask me. Never give them the questions or the exact questions you're going to ask them. It's a very important reason why, because then they're going to start formulating the answers in their mind, and then they're going to try and memorize those answers. What I do is I give them a general sense of what I'm going to talk about. Now, we're just talking about the upcoming football game and, some attendance issues, stuff like that. I don't sit there and give them the list of 10 questions I plan on asking. Explaining the process usually helps, and putting it in kind terms, like, hey, we're just going to be talking here, ignore the camera, pretend like you and I are just having a conversation here. It's important to ask open-ended questions. Remember what Boyd said, if you ask two-part questions, you'll get someone answering in a complete sentence. And then the last two, listen. Always listen to what your person you're talking to is saying and shut up. Especially in TV and radio, if you're sitting there going, oh, yeah, that's true. That's going to come out in the audio. So you have to sit there and shut up and listen. What you want to do to let the person know you're paying attention is nod your head, make hand gestures, stuff like that, but you do not want to start talking while the other person is talking. Here's a quote from Sean Kelly: do your best to put that person in a position where he feels at ease, he or she feels at ease. For example, I was attempting to interview a dog trainer who had a great personality when teaching his class or being around dogs. We sat him down for a face-to-face, and he shut down. After the third question, we quit and asked him to get the dog that he'd been training. We did the interview while he was handling the dog. Suddenly, his personality returned. We put him back in an element he was used to, and it worked. So if you have a person who is vital to your story and they have just completely shut down, consider this. Is there a different situation you can put them in terms of location or the element regarding the interview? That's a key thing to remember as well. You really want to treat your interview like a date. So you don't rush in for the kiss right away, or if you do, you probably don't have much success. So again, we make that little chit-chat, make the person feel like they are talking to someone they know. And again, this helps calm both of y'all's nerves. Again, you have to listen. Listening is so important for many reasons. Just a couple. One, you're going to get better answers because the person knows you're paying attention to them. If you're not listening to the person, or you're looking down at your phone, at your notes, anything like that, they're going to start pausing. Are you listening to me? Those things. So it's the same thing I get when I look in the class and see everybody staring at their phones. You start talking in a weird cadence when it appears like someone isn't listening. The other thing, listening provides opportunities for great follow-up questions. Listening provides opportunities to recognize when someone dodged a question. Did they really not answer what you asked them? Well, then you need to ask it again in a different way. So those are just three of the many, many reasons why listening is so important. Here are a couple others. Did they have a confusing answer? If somebody gave a confusing answer and you're listening, you're going to know that happened. So you have the opportunity, like Boyd said, to pretend like you're deaf. And what was that? I didn't quite catch that. Give them a chance to clear up that confusing answer. We went over the others there: obvious follow-up questions, avoidance of questions, better answers. The good news is when you listen and you really are paying attention to your interview, you're going to start to recognize those usable sound bites the second you hear them. You're going to know this. You're going to think, that was a good one. That's my closing bite. Ooh, that's going to be up high in the story. So you'll start almost writing your story as you're doing your interviews. One last thing. The last thing you should ask. So the first thing you should ask is, what's your name and what's your title? The last thing you should ask is, hey, is there anything else I didn't ask or anything else you want to add? 95, 96, 97% of the time, they're going to say, nope, that's good. I'm ready to go. But you will get that occasional person who has additional information and we're just waiting for the opportunity to provide it. So give them that opportunity. It may not lead anything. It may lead into something fantastic. We don't know, but you give the interviewee that chance. The last question you ask, is there anything else you want to add or something I didn't ask?